It was a cold day by the shores of the Vltava when Jaromir and his companions settled into their newly constructed homes. Months had passed since they left their homeland, and their journey had been long and treacherous. Along the way, they encountered many foreign peoples, including the Celts, Goths, and Avars. Jaromir whistled softly as he stowed his weapons in his home, his thoughts drifting to his siblings. His brother had joined a druzhina and established his own village by the Svislach River, while his sister had joined a Sklaveni tribe and settled near the Danube's shores. Little did any of them know that centuries later, their villages would grow into the great cities of Prague, Belgrade, and Miensk. Welcome to our video on the earliest stages of Slavic history. In this episode, we journey back to a time steeped in mystery, an era long before Russia, Poland, or Bohemia have ever existed. We will explore the origins of the Slavic people and attempt to answer the difficult, controversial question: where did the Slavs come from? Was there a singular Slavic homeland, or is the reality more complex than we can imagine? Terminology. Before we dive into the origins of the Slavic peoples, we must clarify a few things about the nature of this topic. And tracing the origins of any ethnic group, especially a linguistically diverse one like the Slavs, is exceedingly difficult. Ethnic boundaries in the past don't always match those we use today, and the lines between different peoples were often fluid. Furthermore, the ancient Slavs left no written records of their own, meaning much of what we know comes from foreign observers, such as the Eastern Romans, whose accounts were often biased or misinformed. Linguistic evidence, such as reconstructions of Proto-Slavic languages, is controversial due to the sparse nature of the data. Ancient, pre-Christian Slavic peoples did not have their own writing systems, so piecing together their origins through archaeology presents its own challenges. While pottery and tools are often used to classify ancient cultures, they can be shared by multiple ethnic groups. For example, it's easy to associate certain archaeological sites with Slavic peoples, but those same sites may have been inhabited by other groups with trade relations to the Slavs. With these complexities in mind, we'll examine various theories about the Slavic origins and possible homeland, as well as consider the arguments that question the very notion of a unified Slavic identity. Possible homelands. The original homeland of the Slavic peoples remains a mystery. Due to the lack of reliable written records, we may never be certain about the exact location. Some scholars use linguistic evidence to link Proto-Slavic languages to an eastward migration of Indo-European groups alongside the Indic, Baltic, and Iranic language families. This evidence points to potential homelands in southern Ukraine, Russia, or even Central Asia. There are theories connecting the Slavs to the Yamnaya culture in Central Asia, a Neolithic society that many believe to be the Urheimat, the original homeland of all Indo-European peoples. However, proving this theory is challenging, as no written records exist from that time. Later archaeological studies suggest other possible homelands for the Slavs. The Prague culture, for example, which includes materials from the Prague region, has been proposed as a candidate. However, this theory is less popular due to the region's historical associations with Celtic and Gothic peoples. The areas now known as Poland, Czechia, and Slovakia have also been suggested as the original homeland, but these lands were a cultural melting pot during ancient times, inhabited by Goths, Celts, Huns, and more. This makes it difficult to define them as the unequivocal Slavic motherland. The most widely accepted theory today suggests that if there ever was a Slavic homeland, it likely lay somewhere in the region of Polesia, on the frontier of modern-day Belarus and Ukraine. Some archaeological cultures from this area such as the Kyiv culture in the Dnieper River basin, are strong candidates for the Proto-Slavic people. These cultures flourished around the final days of the Western Roman Empire, over 1,500 years ago, and their artifacts exhibit a distinct, unified style. While connections to neighboring cultures like the Kolochin culture exist, the exact origins of these Proto-Slavic peoples remain unclear. Possible homelands. Scholars continue to debate whether the Kyiv culture was the original Slavic group, or if they migrated from elsewhere. Evidence suggests that this group may have begun to move as Gothic and Hunnic peoples encroached on the region in the 6th century CE. It's believed that, under the duress of these invasions, the Proto-Slavic peoples left the fertile lands where chestnut and magnolia trees grew, but the details of this migration remain uncertain. The Veneti and Antes. Now, let's turn to literary sources for potential clues about early Slavic tribes. The first mentions of these tribes date back to the 1st and 2nd centuries CE, in the writings of Roman authors like Pliny and Tacitus. These sources describe a tribe called the Veneti, who lived to the east of the Vistula River, likely in modern Poland or Belarus. Though their exact location is debated, the Veneti were depicted as distinct from their Germanic neighbors. By the 6th century CE, the Eastern Roman historian Procopius provided more detailed descriptions of the Veneti. He described them as tall, red-haired people who practiced a form of democracy by electing military leaders and worshipped a singular lightning deity, possibly Perun, a later Slavic god. This suggests an early connection between the Veneti and later Slavic culture. Similarly, the historian Jordanes mentioned a tribe called the Venedi while chronicling the history of the Goths. He described them as living in clan structures, with different names like Sclavenii and Antes, which appear to refer to various Slavic tribes. These groups were known for their warlike nature and frequent raids on the northern borders of the Roman Empire. The credibility of Jordanes' account is debated, however, as his description may have been influenced by his bias against these tribes. Other Eastern Roman sources, such as the Strategikon, also mention the Antes and Sclavenii. These groups were feared for their warrior spirit, and some scholars believe the Veneti, Antes, and Sclavenii were part of a broader Slavic migration. However, the evidence is mixed, and some scholars question whether these tribes were Slavic or if they were Gothic, due to the cultural exchanges and mixing that occurred between neighboring peoples. The name Sclavenii eventually came to represent all the southern Slavic tribes that migrated into the Balkans. In the end, the names Veneti and Antes lived on in the now extinct Wends, a group of Slavs who lived in Germany throughout the Middle Ages. These names, based on secondary sources, likely refer to a variety of peoples, all of whom are considered the Proto-Slavic ancestors by most scholars. The nature of the Slavic migrations. The origins of the Slavic people also raise questions about their migration patterns. Wherever the Slavs came from, be it the Ukrainian-Belarusian frontier or the Vistula River region, their dispersal across Eastern Europe was influenced by a combination of internal movement and external pressures. The migrations of the Slavs were likely caused by the movement of various peoples, including the Huns, Avars, and Goths, during the period of late antiquity. The Roman historian Jordanes mentions a war between the Ostrogoths and a Slavic king named Boz in the 4th century CE, though the credibility of this story is questionable. The Slavic migrations were a diverse and loosely organized movement of peoples, as evidenced by archaeological records and contemporary sources. By the 6th to 8th centuries CE, the Slavs had begun to settle across the Balkans, establishing new forts and rebuilding cities, with many Slavic groups settling as far west as modern Germany. Many of these Slavs eventually became vassals of powerful empires, including the Frankish Empire and the Byzantine Empire. The Avar Khaganate, a nomadic polity that emerged in the 5th century CE, played a major role in the dispersal of the Slavic peoples. The Avars' control over Central Europe led to the creation of a unified region, in which the Slavs developed a shared Slavic koine, or common tongue, used for communication between the diverse Slavic groups living there. In the end, the Slavic migrations were a complex and multifaceted process, shaped by both external invasions and internal movements. The legacy of these migrations continues to shape the Eastern European landscape to this day.